And a vast network of facial recognition cameras keeping watch over Moscow is now playing a key role in the battle against the spread of the virus in Russia. Police are using those cameras to keep an eye on those who've been sent to quarantine. They're warning them that anybody sneaking out of the city of 16 million residents would lead to a 5-year jail term. This is as Russia has less cases per head of population than any other nation in the world. With a population of some 146 million, Russia apparently just has 253 people infected. Joining me now is Rob Parsons, our chief foreign editor. Rob, what really is the situation in Russia right now?
Well, if you listen to President Putin, the situation is completely under control. And the figures do rather suggest that perhaps he's got a point. The question will be, how accurate are those figures? That said, you mentioned the surveillance system that they put in place in Moscow, something that they inherited from the World Cup that was held last year, now being used, linked up to an artificial intelligence system to carry out facial recognition of people who might try to break any quarantine that they've put under. Other measures are being taken, but there doesn't seem to be, I don't think, any sense of panic at the moment in Russia, not even in Moscow, where most of the cases that have occurred have happened. You mentioned that Russia has at least on paper, has an extraordinarily low infection rate. Only 450 or so people have been infected, according to the official figures. That's less even than Luxembourg. And at 0.09% of the population, less than any other country in the world, including Taiwan, which has been praised so much for the efforts it's been taken. Some things are happening. Certain gyms, for instance, have been closed down, schools have been closed down, higher education establishments, but restaurants are still open, cafes are still open, bars are still open, and so on and so forth. One big thing that's changing is the church. The Russian Orthodox Church, which is so influential in the country, has started to take measures, for instance, on sharing the communion wine per spoon. That's been stopped. Clearly recognition that given the number of believers in the country, that could be a really dangerous and potentially multiplying way of spreading the virus around the country.
But Rob, if those figures do start to increase, there are some who say that Russia would struggle to cope with any large-scale epidemic.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things here, I think. I mean, first of all, there are severe doubts among many people in Russia about the accuracy of those figures. President Putin says, look, we're not trying to massage the figures. There's no question of it. We may not, he says, have completely got the accurate picture, but we're certainly not massaging the figures. So therein lies, I think, an area where the state and the people probably agree that perhaps there is something wrong with the way the Russians are going about gathering their information. Perhaps it doesn't help that the only testing laboratory up until now, I think things are just changing this week, is in Novosibirsk, thousands of kilometers away from the epicenter of the epidemic in Russia and Moscow. And the test itself is not regarded as being particularly sensitive, although it's been approved by the World Health Organization. But it's not just that either. It's also, I think, a considerable fear among Russians that its record on dealing with pandemics in the past has not been good. It's ranked, I think, 116th in the world for its capacity to deal with pandemics. Its record on, for instance, HIV was very poor. On drug-resistant tuberculosis, very poor. The hospitals, although on paper looking good, in actual reality, are not set up to deal with a pandemic of this kind. The funding for the health service in Russia is just not been good enough for the last few years. And the fears, I think, stem from that Russia, if it does happen, and the fears are growing that a spike could happen very soon, including their own virologist, one on television just last night, saying that Russia would catch up with Italy in 3 weeks, that Russia is just not in a position to cope should it happen.
Rob Parsons, our chief foreign editor there, thank you.